So today I'm going to good morning everybody, whoever is present, and today I'm going to take a very important topic, that is antihypertensive drug. Now this is given in your competency based curriculum with the PH 1.27. If you have ever visited volume 1 of competency based curriculum, you would realize that in the competency PH 127 this antihypertensive drugs are being mentioned. So let us then proceed the antihypertensive drug. So as you can see, the high blood pressure is called as the silent killer. Why it is called as a silent killer? Because it may promote heart attacks because of the increased smooth muscle vascular hyperplasia, or or it may cause stroke or dementia, or it may cause kidney failure, or it may cause a vision loss. So that is why it is called as a silent killer. You all must be acquainted with sphygmomanometer. Nowadays it is automated. It is no longer mercury. Some at peripheral centers you may find a mercury manometer also, but here it is sphygmomanometer is now like this, which I have shown you in the diagram. So what is the we are going to see here, we are just going to I make you acquainted with the high blood pressure consequences. That is, in the brain you may have cerebral vascular strokes, hypertensive encephalopathy, confusion, headache, and convulsions. In the retina of eye, you may have hypertensive retinopathy. In the heart, you may have the heart attacks, or you may have the hypertensive cardiomyopathy, heart failure. In kidney, again, you have hypertensive nephropathy, and in blood you may have elevated blood sugar level. So this is all the high blood pressure lead to. So the my I will take this session into two. That is, in first part I am going to cover certain specific learning objective, and in my second part I am again going to cover certain learning specific learning objective. So at the end of today's session, the student would be able to define hypertension, discuss the type of hypertension, enlist the drug used for hypertension, explain the mechanism of action and adverse effect of each class of drug, in which today we are going to cover only few classes of the drug, because in the second part I am going to cover the rest part. Will be able to choose the drug of choice in specific condition, distinguish between emergency and urgency types of hypertension, and then describe advantages, disadvantages of each class of the drugs. This is very, very important, because my objective to you is, all things are given in the book, but my objective is to make you realize in which situation or in which set of patients you have to choose which drug. So what are the advantages, disadvantages of each group should be known to you. Then also explain the drugs preferred and avoided with justification in hypertension during pregnancy, which is a very common feature. We tell is as pregnancy induced hypertension, but we call it as eclampsia when there is proteinuria with convulsions. So there are important thing is, I will also let you know the drugs which are safe and unsafe in pregnancy. Then I will like to discuss the hypertension treatment in specific age groups and in special conditions like angina, congestive heart failure, diabetes, bronchial asthma, gout, obesity, migraine, and osteoporosis. So let us then process it. Now, JNC, what do you mean by JNC? Joint National Committee 8, which is identifying the classification of the blood pressure. So, it is about, for greater than 18 years. When normal कब कहते हैं? When it is less than 120 and less than 80. Pre-hypertensive state कब कहते हैं? जब less than 140 हो. That is ranges from 120 to 139. और diastolic कितना आना चाहिए? 80 to 89. जब हम स्टेज 1 कहेंगे तो कब कहेंगे? When it is 140 to 159 and the diastolic is 90 to 99. So this is stage 1. When we classify it into stage 2, it has to be more than 160 and more than 100 diastolic. Then we call it as stage 2 hypertension. So this is Joint National Committee which has classified the blood pressure. Then types of hypertension. Because we are bound to treat the hypertension, we should also know what are the different types of the hypertension. So you have essential hypertension, you have secondary. Essential is also called as idiopathic. So essential hypertension or primary hypertension or idiopathic hypertension. Then you have secondary hypertension, then you have white coat hypertension, then you have latent systolic hypertension, you have gestational, that is a pregnancy induced hypertension. Then you have hypertensive crisis, in which we have two type of crisis. One is hypertensive urgencies, another one is hypertensive emergencies. So we will see in the further slides what is the difference between the two. First, let us take the most common one, that is primary or idiopathic or essential hypertension. Most of the adults with hypertension are in this category. And why it is so? Because of the genetic predisposition, because of diet, because of lifestyle, and age related factors. Lifestyle hereby means unhealthy lifestyle, that is, a person is smoker or drinking too much alcohol or being in stress, being overweight, eating too much salt, and not getting enough exercise. So, I would like to say that people who are not home food lovers and they always order on Swiggy and all and take all these products related to maida, they are bound to have hypertension later in life. Fried food will also lead to this. So, eat healthy and stay healthy. So now secondary hypertension. Now secondary hypertension, here in primary, what was the difference? The cause was not identified. While in secondary hypertension, there is a identifiable cause and it can be potentially reversible because the cause of your hypertension is known. So 30% of the age group of 18 to 40, primary was more of the elderly population. Here secondary is from 18 to 40 years of the age is secondary hypertension. There can be narrowing of the arteries that's supplying the blood to the kidney, that is the nephrogenic cause can be there in secondary hypertension, or it can be adrenal gland disease or side effects of certain medication, that is the medication induced hypertension, in which we are already knowing about oral contraceptives, diet aids, stimulants, antidepressants, some over the counter medication can also lead to secondary hypertension. Obstructive sleep apnea is another cause. Hormonal abnormalities, thyroid abnormalities, constriction of aorta, these are all secondary hypertension causes, in which adrenal gland medulla can also lead to hypertension. Now, what is the difference between urgency and emergency? Now, urgency is a very high elevated systolic and diastolic blood pressure. It may be more than 180 mm systolic and more than 110 mm diastolic. So that if that is the identifiable blood pressure in which the patient is brought to the hospital, it is called as urgency. When it is called as emergency, it has to have features of neurological, aortic, cardiac, renal, hematological, or pregnancy related damage. So there is tissue damage. When they call it as emergency, that means there is associated tissue damage. When they call it as urgency, that means there is a high blood pressure but without any organ damage. So this is the difference between emergency and urgency. Now, how to remember the classification of hypertension, because everybody is terrified about how to remember the classification. Now, if you remember your physiology, you will realize that blood pressure is cardiac output into the peripheral vascular resistance. So, we ought to address either the cardiac output or the peripheral vascular resistance. So, I will just tell you the mnemonic first and then I will let you know what is the exact classification. So, you can do what? You can address this into these following types. 3A, that is ABCD. ABCD, everybody has to remember. So 3A hereby means alpha blockers, AC inhibitors, ARB blockers. AC inhibitors must be taken by yesterday Dr. Jyotsna, that is angiotensin convertase enzyme inhibitors. ARB, that is angiotensin receptor blockers. Beta blockers, B stands for beta blockers, C stands for 2C here stands for calcium channel blockers and central sympatholytics, and 2D stands for diuretics and dilators. So these are dilators can be of various types. They can be purely venodilators, in which we have we will study in anti-enzyme drug as the nitrates, and we may have arterial plus venous venodilators, and you may have purely arterial dilators. So these are vasodilators. And diuretics, you may have thiazide and furosemide. Now you can see the classification. This is a mnemonic which you can understand, which you can remember by A, B, C, D. That is alpha blockers, AC inhibitors, ARB blockers. B stands for beta blockers, C stands for calcium channel blockers, and central sympatholytics. And D stands for dilators and diuretics. So if you see here, the classification diuretics hereby include three types: thiazide diuretic, high ceiling, and potassium sparing. So in thiazide, most commonly used diuretic is the thiazide one, and out of these three, more of the common practices of to use hydrochlorothiazide in a dose of 12.5 milligram, and this can be used as a first choice just in elderly patient. Please note, elderly patients may require hydrochlorothiazide in a dose of 12.5 milligram per day. Or you can have the second alternative as chlorthalidone. And suppose if you don't have the blood pressure regulation with 12.5, or you the blood pressure is not normotensive, then you can combine it. I will talk about combination later on. But yes, thiazides, out of thiazides, more of the commonly used diuretic as antihypertensive is thiazide group, and out of thiazide it is hydrochlorothiazide. Then you have high ceiling furosemide, that is furosemide, like furosemide is the example. Then we have potassium sparing like spironolactone and amiloride. We are going to talk about each class, in which set of patients we require diuretics. Then we have AC inhibitors, which we have been yesterday dealt with another teacher. That is, you have the examples of captopril, enalapril, lisinopril, perindopril, ramipril, and fosinopril. So these are about AC inhibitors. Then you have angiotensin 1 receptor. Now let me tell you, when I was undergraduate, I was pretty confused, because what we are inhibiting is production of angiotensin 2, but what we are inhibiting receptor is angiotensin 1. So angiotensin 1 receptor is being blocked, and the blockers are losartan, candesartan, irbesartan, valsartan, and telmisartan. Out of this, more of the common practice nowadays is to use telmisartan. Then you have direct renin inhibitor, which is called as aliskiren, which can also be like inhibiting the production of angiotensin 1 and 2, because one is inhibited, then this is called as direct renin inhibitor. Then calcium channel blockers. In calcium channel blockers, we will study in detail in anti-anginal drug that there are three types of calcium channel blockers. Verapamil, here we are going to just broadly see this, and then in the subsequent slide we are going to see what are the calcium channel blockers. One is verapamil, diltiazem, nifedipine, felodipine, the amlodipine, nitardipine, and lesidipine. You will understand better when we are going to progress the slide. So C stands for, like I told you, A, B, C, D. So C here stands for calcium channel blockers, and C, here we have three sets of different classification according to the chemical classification. But overall, most important group is dihydropyridine. And dihydropyridine hereby means all the suffix ending with pene: nifedipine, felodipine, amlodipine, nitardipine, lesidipine. These are most important antihypertensive group. Then we have beta adrenergic blocker. Now, beta adrenergic blockers are propanol, metoprolol, atenolol. Important thing is we are preferring cardioselective beta blockers, and these are having potential advantages over the non-selective beta blockers. So we are going to study that also. Alpha plus beta adrenergic blockers, in which we have labetalol, carvedilol, and we have then alpha adrenergic blockers, in which we have prazosin, terazosin, doxazosin, phentolamine, and phenoxybenzamine. We are going to see in each group where we are using these drugs. Central sympatholytic like clonidine and methyl-dopa has a role in pregnancy-induced hypertension. So these are important group of drugs which are not routinely prescribed, but in specific population, that is in the pregnancy-induced hypertension, these becomes the drug of choice. So then vasodilators can be arteriola, that is hydralazine, minoxidil, and doxycycline. Hydralazine is an arterial dilator. Minoxidil and diazoxide, they act by opening the potassium channel, then thereby causing hyperpolarization, and causing vasodilatation in the smooth muscle vasculature. Then we have arterio plus venous vasodilators, which are sodium nitroprusside, and then you have venodilators purely, which are nitrates. So this is about the classification of the drug. Now, in one single shot, you will be able to realize how do different types of drug act through different receptors. Now, if you see, we already know that what has to be optimum, the cardiac output and total peripheral resistance, because cardiac output into total peripheral resistance is the most important thing which determine the blood pressure in an individual. So cardiac output is decreased, and decrease in what manner? Decrease in force of contraction, decrease in heart rate. And what are the drugs which are acting on these causing this decrease in force of contraction and heart rate? These are beta receptor blockers and peripherally acting sympatholytics. They all will reduce the cardiac output. Cardiac output, this is acting on heart. Then cardiac output can also be reduced by decreasing the blood volume. And what are these drugs which decreases the blood volume? One can be the diuretics, which are promoting the salt and water excretion. Another one can be angiotensin inhibitors, and another one can be the beta receptor blockers. Why beta receptor blocker here? Because beta receptors, you already know about B1 and B2 receptors. B1 receptors are also addressing renin. So they will inhibit the renin secretion, thereby inhibit the, what they are going to inhibit is finally the production of angiotensin 2, which is also angiotensin 2 will act on aldosterone and will decrease the production of aldosterone. So they will decrease in blood volume, because aldosterone is an uh, agent which is going to decrease the salt and water reabsorption from the distal or the collecting duct of the nephron. So this is important, that decrease in blood volume can be addressed by acting on the heart, by acting on the kidney. Kidney hereby means the diuretics, the angiotensin receptor inhibitors, and beta receptor blockers. Now, what are the drugs which relaxes the vascular smooth muscle? That is decreasing the total peripheral resistance, which is a synonym of determination of systolic blood pressure. So you have peripherally acting sympatholytics, like I'm going to talk that in detail. You have calcium channel blockers, you have direct vasodilators, and you have the angiotensin inhibitors. They all going to relax the vascular smooth muscles. Then you have the decreased sympathetic flow, that is the centrally acting drug, which will address both the decreased cardiac output and also decrease the total peripheral resistance. And hereby, they are going to decrease the sympathetic outflow. Sympathetic outflow is decreased, so there will be decreased secretion of noradrenaline centrally, and so because of which there will be decrease in cardiac output and decrease in total peripheral resistance. So these are the drugs which are acting on respective organs with a respective mechanism. So this is how we are going to deal with the drugs. Now let us see the ACE inhibitors status in hypertension. These are first line drugs, and they are useful for all grades of hypertension. Often monotherapy by the single drug, that is monotherapy itself means a single drug in mild hypertensive usually is able to control the blood pressure. So it is useful for all grades of hypertension as a monotherapy, and they can safely combine with few other antihypertensive drugs. They are well tolerated. They are specially indicated when the antihypertensive having the hypertrophy at heart, because they are going to decrease the hypertrophy of heart. So this is a very important mechanism of AC inhibitors. Then with diabetes mellitus, because they are going to slow the development of nephropathy. With renal disease, they are going to slow the progression of chronic renal disease. With coexisting ischemic heart disease and post MI patient also, they have a very specific effect. They can also be combined safely with antihypertensive drugs like beta blockers, like calcium channel blockers, like diuretics. Except potassium sparing diuretics, you are not getting combining the AC inhibitors, because AC inhibitors also cause hyperkalemia. So if you give it with potassium sparing diuretics, they will cause the enhanced hyperkalemia. So they're given with all other diuretics except potassium sparing diuretics. Other things which they can be combined is calcium channel blockers and beta blockers. So this is a very important aspect of AC inhibitors status in hypertension. Then this is the renin-angiotensin system. I'm not going to much talk about it, but the regulatory mechanism is the renin. One of the regulatory mechanism is renin, where wherever there is a drop in blood pressure, drop in fluid volume, there will be increased release of renin. Angiotensinogen is converted into angiotensin 1, and renin acts on angiotensinogen to form angiotensin 1. Angiotensin 1 is being addressed by ACE enzyme, which is also degrading the bradykinin. So if here angiotensin 1 is not converted into angiotensin 2 because of the ACE enzyme, this is being released by lungs, remember that. And bradykinin is also going to do what? It is going to be metabolized through this enzyme. So it will be inactivated. So if you inhibit this enzyme, you are going to increase the decrease the conversion of angiotensin 1 to angiotensin 2, and also decrease the bradykinin levels, which will increase the bradykinin levels. And this increase in bradykinin levels will have two effects. What are those effects? One is a beneficial effect, another one is a deleterious effect. Beneficial effect is that it is going to aid in the vasodilation activity, and second deleterious effect is that because of the bradykinin there will be increased production of substance P, and this is also an agent which will cause the chances of cough, which is a common side effect of ACE inhibitors. So this is how it has to be explained. Now this angiotensin 2 enzyme will act directly on the smooth muscles of the vessels and will cause narrowing, and it will act on aldosterone to stimulate the reabsorption of sodium chloride and water. It will act, and this is how by production of aldosterone. So it is going to act on adrenal uh, glands and will cause production of aldosterone, which will stimulate the reabsorption of sodium chloride and water. And so if you inhibit angiotensin 2 production, you are going to inhibit all these things. Now mechanism of action, it will reduce. How it is going to act, this has already been dealt, but again I will just touch upon the antihypertensive role. It is going to decrease the peripheral arterial resistance because angiotensin 2 is not being formed, which is a very potent vasoconstrictor. Then there will be raised bradykinin levels. As I told you, it was going to inhibit the metabolism of bradykinin. It will cause fall in aldosterone level, which will inhibit the sodium chloride and water reabsorption. It is going to but because of because of feedback mechanism, it is going to increase in renin activity. It is also suited for young patient and also patients with gout, because it does not produce hyperuricemia with peripheral vascular disease. Because in peripheral vascular disease we cannot give beta blockers, non-selective beta blockers, because they are going to constrict the peripheral blood vessels. So it can be safely given in that. It is lipid neutral. Please note, it is lipid neutral. Thereby it means that it does not produce any significant effect on HDL, LDL, total cholesterol, triglycerides. And also patient with left ventricular hypertrophy, which is having hypertension, because it is addressing the cardiac remodeling also. So these are the specific group in which these groups are did. Achha, what are the advantages? Why they are number one drugs? Because there is no postural hypertension or electrolyte disturbances, feeling of weakness or CNS effect. That is, quality of life is not impaired. It is like not taking a drug. You are taking a drug but without any side effects. So it is very safe. It is safe in asthmatics, diabetics, peripheral vascular disease patient, and it is also long term. If you give this drug, it has potential to reduce the incidence of type 2 diabetes mellitus in high risk individuals. Secondary hyperaldosterone potassium loss due to diuretics is also prevented. So this is very, very important. And renal blood flow is well maintained. So these are very important advantages which make it number one drug. Then we have the left ventricular hypertrophy, increase wall to human ratio of the blood vessel that occur in hypertensive patients. This is reversed. There is, as I already told you, no hyperuricemia no deleterious effect on lipid profile, no rebound hypertension. Rebound hypertension is seen as a phenomena with beta blockers. So this is absent in this case. And there is no worsening of quality of life. We all want to get cured without impairing our quality of life. So these are the set of the drugs which will ensure your general well-being, will not hamper your work performance, sleep or sexual performance, which is a very important thing. Then side effects is, now if you see the prototype is captopril. Other drugs can be enalapril, lisinopril, perindopril, ramipril and fosinopril. Now the objective can be which of the drugs are not pro drugs, which every drug is a pro drug in AC inhibitors, all prils except the captopril and lisinopril. So please remember that captopril and lisinoprils are not pro drugs. So you can remember by the captopril name itself. C stands for cough here, and why there is a cough? Because of increased level of bradykinin, which is the bad effect, but at the same time it is causing vasodilation through bradykinin release. So that is a good effect. A hereby means acute renal failure can be precipitated. It is contraindicated in pregnancy. So P stands for pregnancy, in which you have to remember the word contraindication, not indication. T is the taste alteration, dysgeusia, which is because of the sulfhydryl group, the captopril is there. So it can be a drug specific side effect. Then angioedema, this is again because of increased substance P. So there can be chances of angioedema and bradykinin, of course. P is proteinuria. R is rashes and urticaria. I is increase in potassium, and L stands for low blood pressure. So these are the common side effects of captopril or drugs like AC inhibitors. Now, special points to be mentioned is the captopril and lisinopril, as I told you, are active drug. Rest of the all AC inhibitors are pro drugs, which are going to convert into the uh, pralate, that is anapril into pralate, right? So that is very important to remember. An extensive tissue distribution and addressing the local renin-angiotensin system is by a specific drug like Lamipil. So wherever there is left ventricular hypertrophy with hypertension, you prefer to give Ramipril out of this. 2.5 milligram or 5 milligram OD can be started. So these are various important pharmacokinetic parameters. And if you see the individual areas, so you will see that fosinopril can be remembered that it is a Phosphonate. Captopril is having sulfhydryl compound, so it is having a dysgeusia, the drug effect. Okay, and if you see the prodrug, as I already told you, all are prodrug except captopril, and another one is the lisinopril. These are active compounds. Bioavailability is concerned, the high bioavailability is captopril. If you see the time to peak hours, it is again very quick to have onset of action. Elimination half-life is more with perindopril. Prolong, P से P याद रखो, prolong. And if you see the mode of excretion, hepatic and renal mode होता है fosinopril का. Duration of action, if you see, all the later prils which were developed is having the longer duration of action, including the ramipril. So if you see the daily dose, the least dose is of ramipril. In whichever there is a left ventricular hypertrophy, we prefer this drug. Then with this, these are the ACE inhibitors and the ARBS. ACE inhibitors, the doses are given here. What you have to remember, I will tell you only 2-3 drugs which you need to remember. Enalapril is a very common agent which is used. So I will request all of you to remember this. Enalapril 2.5 to 40 मिलीग्राम दे रखा है, लेकिन यूजुअली इसको 2.5 to 5 मिलीग्राम तक यूज कर लेते हैं. Lisinopril is also a very popular antihypertensive drug. And if you remember all this, enalapril and lisinopril with the 5 milligram dose, it is good enough to remember. Also, very important drug is ramipril. So please remember ramipril 1.25 milligram up to 5 milligram. आप remember कर लो, 20 milligram भूल भी जाओ तो भी कोई बात नहीं. ठीक है. So important drugs मेरे हिसाब से कौन से आपको याद करनी चाहिए? Enalapril, lisinopril and ramipril. बाकी सारी पिल्स भी आप लिख के आएंगे, लेकिन आपको डोजेस इनकी याद करनी है। अब ARBS क्या होता है? एंजियोटेंसिन रिसेप्टर ब्लॉकर्स। नाउ एंजियोटेंसिन रिसेप्टर ब्लॉकर्स आर ऑल sartans, इनका सफिक्स क्या होता है? sartans. So you have candesartan, that is, then you have eprosartan, you have irbesartan, you have losartan, you have olmesartan, you have telmisartan, you have valsartan. So please remember, out of all this, you should remember losartan, that is 25 to 100 milligram. इसका भी एक मिडल वैल्यू याद रख लो, 50 milligram. ऐसे ही telmisartan की एक मिडल वैल्यू याद रख लो, 50 milligram. ओके, सो 50 मिलीग्राम 40 टू 80 मिलीग्राम इसकी डोज रेंज है। अगर आप इसको भी 50 मिलीग्राम याद रखते हो और इसको भी 50 मिलीग्राम याद रखते हो तो ये गुड इनफ है। नाउ ऑलवेज रिमेंबर, कंबाइनिंग विथ थायराइड यूजुअली इज मोर इफेक्टिव देन द डोज इंक्रीज। अगर आपको मैक्सिमम डोज इंक्रीज करने का शौक है या आप करना चाहते हो मोनोथेरेपी, तो इससे बेटर है आप इसको कंबाइन कर लो विथ थायराइड डायूरेटिक। दिस विल इंक्रीज द efficacy or the BP will be much controlled instead of using this. Now you have direct renin inhibitor. Renin आपको पता है एंजियोटेंसिनोजिन को एंजियोटेंसिन 1 एंजियोटेंसिन में बदलता है, एंजियोटेंसिन 1 में। सो एंजियोटेंसिन 1 अगर नहीं बनेगा तो आगे की प्रक्रिया नहीं हो पाएगी। सो ये डायरेक्ट रेनिन इनहिबिटर कौन से है? एलिस्कैरिन। सो इट इज एलिस्कैरिन के बारे में बस इतनी ही बताना चाहूंगी बात, that it is as effective as ACE inhibitors or ARB in hypertension. But we are not using very commonly eliscarin. The more commonly used drugs are the ACE inhibitors and angiotensin receptor blockers. So ARB blockers के बारे में important aspects that they do not interfere with the degradation of bradykinin. So cough is really rare. सबसे important बात, this is the potential advantage of ARB blocker over the AC inhibitors. They result in more complete inhibition of angiotensin 1 receptor activation because response to angiotensin 2, that is response to angiotensin 2 is generated via alternative pathway which is consequent to AT1 receptor activation which remain intact with AC inhibitors. अब इसको सिंपल भाषा में समझाती हूँ। हम AC inhibitors को कैसे ऐड कर रहे हैं? AC inhibitors एंजियोटेंसिन 1 को एंजियोटेंसिन 2 में नहीं बदलने दे रहा, और एंजियोटेंसिन 2 is the more active part which is a very potent vasoconstrictor addressing the blood vessels causing the vasoconstriction, even addressing the heart causing the increased force of contraction. So all these things are addressed by angiotensin 2. But let me tell you, apart from the passage of converting angiotensin 1 into angiotensin 2 by using this ACE enzyme can also be done by alternate pathway. So if you are inhibiting one pathway, angiotensin 2 may be generated by some other pathway. So if you completely block angiotensin 2 बन भी जाएगा किसी और pathway पे, तो act किसके through करेगा? AT1 receptors. So AT1 receptors are inhibited by ARB blockers. इसीलिए कहते हैं कि complete blockage अगर आता है तो ARB blocker से आता है, ठीक है। और इनडायरेक्टली ये AT2 रिसेप्टर को एक्टिवेशन करेंगे। जब एक चीज को अपन ने ब्लॉक कर दिया तो दूसरा चीज अपने आप बॉस बन जाएगा। तो एंजियोटेंसिन रिसेप्टर्स भी कितने तरह के होते हैं? एंजियोटेंसिन 1 एंड टाइप 2। सो 1 को अगर ब्लॉक कर दिया तो 2 ओवर एक्टिव हो जाएगा, मगर वो ओवर एक्टिव प्रॉब्लम क्रिएट नहीं करेगा, वो वासोडायलेशन करता है। सो इट इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट टू नोट दैट। So due to blockage of AT1 receptor mediated feedback inhibition, more angiotensin 2 is produced which act on AT2 receptors that remain unblocked. So this is again important thing. अगर feedback का mechanism है भी जिससे angiotensin 2 बन रहा है तो वो act नहीं कर पाएगा, क्योंकि अपन ने किस receptor को block कर रखा है? AT1 receptors को। But AT2 receptor पे act करेगा जो अच्छा रिसेप्टर होता है ब्लड प्रेशर कंट्रोल के हिसाब से, क्योंकि वो वासोडायलेटेशन करता है। So ARB have a little increase in the level of angiotensin 1 to 7 which is raised by ACE inhibitors, since angiotensin 1 to 7 is partly degraded by ACE enzyme. So this is again a very important feature that angiotensin 1 to 7 जो बनते हैं ये रेज कर सकता है ACE inhibitors but not ARB. तो ये दूसरा एडवांटेज हुआ। सो देर इज नो कफ। लॉर्सार्टेन की एडिशनल एंटीप्लेटलेट इफेक्ट भी होती है, और मेटाबोलाइट ऑफ लॉर्सार्टेन इट आल्सो रिड्यूसेस द प्रोस्टाग्लैंडिन सिंथेसिस। तो लॉर्सार्टेन का स्पेसिफिक फीचर आपको क्या याद रखना है, दैट इट हैज एंटीप्लेटलेट इफेक्ट and metabolite of losartan reduces the prostaglandin synthesis, and it also reduces the proliferation of arteriola intima. So that is a very important role of losartan. This you have to remember. So these are ARB. As I told you, I just wanted to show in this slide the 82 role. Here you can see here 81 receptor vasoconstriction कर रहा है, growth promotion कर रहा है, inflammation कर रहा है, SNS activation कर रहा है, जबकि 82 receptor क्या कर रहा है, vasodilatation, anti proliferative effect, natriuresis मतलब सोडियम एक्सक्रीशन को भी प्रमोट कर रहा है, और टिश्यू रीजनरेशन को भी प्रमोट कर रहा है. तो अगर हम ARB ब्लॉकर से 81 रिसेप्टर को ब्लॉक कर देंगे तो 82 रिसेप्टर इंड्यूस्ड एंजियोटेंसिन 2 कहीं और से भी बन रहा होगा सपोज, तो 82 रिसेप्टर्स उस पे ऐड कर पाएगा, 81 पे ऐड नहीं कर पाएगा, विच इज अ benefit effect, which is a benefit effect. So as you can see here, this bradykinin is being one of the mechanism by which the bradykinin is degraded by ACE. So if you inhibit the ACE, you are inhibiting the degradation of bradykinin, nitric oxide, okay, and these all are adding to the antihypertensive effect. So you can see here the renin is this will be pre-prorenin, then prorenin, then renin, then angiotensin burn 2. Okay, so this is how the mechanism of ARB, and this is second group of drugs are calcium channel blockers. Now the calcium channel blockers I will talk in great detail whenever I am going to take the anti channel. The common property of all three subclasses, there are three subclasses which I am going to mention. All of them is going to inhibit the calcium mediated slow channel component of action potential in smooth muscle and cardiac muscles. अगर आपसे कोई पूछे सिंपल लैंग्वेज में कि कैल्शियम चैनल ब्रोकर कहाँ कहाँ ऐड करते हैं और कैसे ऐड करते हैं, तो दे आर एक्टिंग ऑन एल टाइप ऑफ वोल्टेज गेटेड चैनल इन विच they are going to prevent the entry of calcium into vascular smooth muscles, and they are also going to prevent the calcium entry into the cardiac muscles. By both of them, at one side they are going to decrease the force of contraction and heart rate, and in the other side, that is in vascular smooth muscle, they are going to inhibit the contraction of the vessel wall, and this will cause to vasodilatation, and so they are purely arteriolodilators. They have less role on the veins, so they are acting on two ways. की फीचर आपको क्या याद रखना है, वोल्टेज गेटेड एल टाइप ऑफ कैल्शियम चैनल विच आर प्रेजेंट वेयर one is in the blood vessel, another one is in the heart. So the voltage gated channel has been blocked, by which the entry of calcium is blocked, and by which vasodilatory effect are being done. So here you can see the two most important action of the calcium channel blockers are smooth muscle relaxation and negative chronotropic. Chronotropic hereby means the heart rate is reduced. Inotropic hereby means the force of contraction is reduced, and dromotropic hereby means the conductivity action on heart is reduced. So this is how the calcium channel blocker is going to act. Now there are three important classification. You have a phenyl alkyl amine, which is a hydrophilic papaverine congener. अगर आपसे कोई पूछे ऑब्जेक्टिव में which of the following is a papaverine congener, so out of the all calcium channel blocker, so it is verapamil, which is a phenyl alkyl amine. नेफेडेपिन इज अ डाइहाइड्रोपैरिडीन, सबसे ज्यादा एक्सटेंसिव जो ग्रुप है वो नेफेडेपिन है, विच इज अ लाइपोफिलिक. ये है हाइड्रोफिलिक, verapamil is a hydrophilic. Then diltiazem is also a hydrophilic benzothiazepine. So all this diltiazem and verapamil, they are basically acting more on the diltiazem has an in between role of between nifedipine and verapamil. It is addressing the blood vessels also and the heart also, while verapamil is mainly acting more on the heart, right? And nifedipine is acting more on the blood vasculature, not on the heart. So if you see here, these are various alpha. This is a structure of calcium channel. Which type of calcium channel we are talking about? The voltage sensitive L type of calcium channel. And here you can see there are different subunit: gamma, delta, beta, alpha 2, alpha 1. So here the alpha unit gives the attachment to all the dihydropyridines, phenylalkylamine and benzodiazepine. Now dihydropyridine means all dipines: nifedipine, lecidipine, isradipine, all dipines are there. Phenylalkylamine, you have one drug, verapamil, and benzodiazepine, again you have one drug, that is diltiazem. So these all, this is a structure in which what is there, what is entering is the calcium. So the calcium is actually inhibited by blocking of this drug, these group of drugs. This type of calcium channels are present in two places, as I told you. One is the blood vessel and second one is the heart. So if you see here, this is clear depicted in the smooth muscle cells. Here vasodilatation is produced by calcium channel blocker because the calcium entry is being inhibited. If you have a calcium entry, what will happen? There will be activation of myosin light chain kinase. This will cause phosphorylation of light chain myosin. This will cause as actin and myosin cross bridging, and this will cause lead to vasoconstriction. So this happens with the calcium entry. But once we block this calcium entry into the smooth muscle cells of the vasculature, you will have the end result as vasoconstriction, because there will be no actin myosin cross bridging. Now if you see the in the condition in the heart, you always remember calcium channel blockers, they will cause stimulation when they get entry into the cardiac muscles. They are going to produce stimulation of cardiac release from internal store, and there will be constriction, in fact increased force of contraction of the heart with the increase in heart rate. If you block this calcium channel blocker, also the frequency of calcium channel opening in response to depolarization is blocked. Then what will happen? There will be decreased calcium entry, there will be decreased myocardial contractility, and so there will be decreased AB conduction velocity, and there will be decreased SA node pacemaker rate. So with the decreased entry of the calcium by blocking the calcium channel blockers by, and the frequency of the channel is also blocked, and the calcium channel is also blocked. So frequency as well as channel blockage will lead to decrease in AB conduction and decrease in SA node pacemaker, decreasing the myocardial contractility. So these group of drugs, these are not dihydropyridines, these are verapamil and diltiazem. So they are also used as antiarrhythmic because they are going to decrease AB conduction velocity. So that is why nifedipine like group is not antiarrhythmic. It is going to promote the heart rate. There is increase in reflex tachycardia because they are going to produce vasodilatation. So they, what are the advantage of calcium channel blockers as an antihypertensive drugs? They do not compromise the hemodynamics. That is no impairment of physical work capacity. जैसे कि AC inhibitors थे, उनसे quality of life poor नहीं होती है, ऐसे ही calcium channel blockers हैं, इनसे भी quality of life poor नहीं होती है. Then there is no sedation or other CNS effect. Cerebral perfusion is maintained. This is again a very important effect. It is not contraindicated in asthma and angina. Angina में कौन सा एंजाइना होता है? वेरिएंट. वेरिएंट एंजाइना का मतलब क्या है? वासोस्पाज्म हो जाता है इसमें. एंजाइना एट रेस्ट होता है, इसको वासोस्पाज्म भी कहते हैं, वेरिएंट एंजाइना भी कहते हैं, प्रिंस मेंटल एंजाइना भी कहते हैं. उसके अंदर कॉन्ट्राइंडिकेटेड नहीं है क्योंकि ये कोई इस तरह की एक्टिविटी करने रहा है, वासोडायलेटर होता है. प्लस पेरिफेरल वैस्कुलर डिजीज में भी कॉन्स्ट्रिक्शन नहीं होना चाहिए, वासो कॉन्स्ट्रिक्शन नहीं होना चाहिए. So these drugs are not producing vasoconstriction, they act by vasodilatation. So they are not contraindicated in asthma because in asthma beta blockers are contraindicated, and it is not contraindicated in angina except the nifedipine group. This nifedipine group dihydropyridine group because it causes tachycardia. So apart from that group, diltiazem and verapamil can safely be used, or the other drugs which are not very fast acting and producing intense vasodilatation can be used. They do not impair the renal perfusion and they do not affect the male sexual function. So these are very important advantages of calcium channel blockers. Plus they have no deleterious effect on plasma lipid profile और यूरिक एसिड. अब आप पूछोगे कि यूरिक एसिड बार बार क्यों मेंशन कर रहे हैं, क्योंकि गाउट में भी ड्रग ऑफ चॉइस है ये ड्रग ऑफ चॉइस हो सकती है. एसी इनहिबिटर्स भी हो सकते हैं, एआरबी ब्लॉकर्स भी हो सकते हैं, कैल्शियम चैनल ब्लॉकर्स भी हो सकते हैं. एंड इलेक्ट्रोलाइट इम्बैलेंस नहीं करता. इलेक्ट्रोलाइट इम्बैलेंस कौन सी ग्रुप ऑफ ड्रग्स करेंगी? डायूरेटिक्स. तो वो भी नहीं कर रहा है ये. एंड देर इज नो इम्पेयरमेंट ऑफ क्वालिटी ऑफ लाइफ, क्योंकि सिडेशन नहीं हो रहा इससे, तो आदमी अपना आराम से काम कर सकता है. देर इज दे आर नॉट प्रोड्यूसिंग एनी एडवर्स इफेक्ट इन फीटस ऑल्सो, सो इट कैन बी यूज इन प्रेगनेंसी, बट एट लेबर में ये यूटेराइन रिलैक्सेंट की तरह भी ऐड कर सकते हैं. तो एट टर्म प्रेगनेंसी में आप नहीं दोगे, अदरवाइज इट इज सेफ इन to give it in pregnant women also. So you get my point. AC inhibitors are not safe in pregnant women. They are fetopathic, so they cannot be given. So advantages over AC inhibitors, ARB blockers is they are safe in pregnancy except at term because they are going to relax the uterus. Then diuretics. डायूरेटिक्स भी शायद आपको पढ़ा दिया गया होगा, पर मैं आपको एंटी हाइपोटेंसिव रोल बता दूंगी. 57 है, so there is still time to go. And I can see the Kuldeep Khushwant has left. I was able to see 147 roll number has left. Now Dr. Barkhata has also left. I'm noting all these things. I've kept a pencil and recorder, and one person is recording who persons are being leaving the group. So now diuretics. Diuretics, the studies show that I told you there are diuretics, can be thiazide diuretic, there can be furosemide diuretic, there can be potassium sparing diuretics. But out of all these three, which one is used? Thiazide. Preferred is thiazide. And it is shown that hydrochlorothiazide is most important one, and the dose which is prescribed, मैं आपको जहां जहां dose important होगी वो जरूर बताऊंगी. 12.5 milligram is the dose which is indicated for hydrochlorothiazide, and it is combined with the vasodilators or sympatholytics. Vasodilators of any kind with sympatholytics like clonidine and methyl dopa, अगर इनके साथ कंबाइन करके देंगे हाइड्रोक्लोरोथाइजाइड को. मोनोथेरेपी कब दे सकते हैं? एल्डरली में, उसमें सेफ होती है. लेकिन अगर मोनोथेरेपी से कंट्रोल नहीं हो रहा तो आप किस ग्रुप ऑफ सेट ऑफ क्लास ऑफ ड्रग्स को एक्ट कर सकते हैं? वासोडाइलेटर्स और सिम्पेथोलाइटिक्स. So it is effective in elderly patients and with systolic hypertension, and they reduce the calcium excretions also, so useful in osteoporosis. क्योंकि थायराइड ग्रुप ऑफ डायरेटिक्स, हम डायरेटिक्स में भी स्पेसिफिकली थायराइड ग्रुप ऑफ डायरेटिक्स की बात कर रहे हैं, जो ऑस्टियोपोरोसिस में भी यूज कर सकते हैं बिकॉज दे आर इनहिबिटिंग द कैल्शियम एक्सक्रीशन. They are not very effective whenever there is a chronic kidney disease. You cannot give the thiazide group of diuretics, but उसमें भी exception to the rule है. दो drugs, ये आपका MCQ हो गया, metazolene and indapamide. These are the group of the drugs which can use the can be used in hypertensive patients having a chronic kidney disease. Otherwise, if there is a chronic kidney disease and the GFR is less than 30 ml, thiazide diuretics are contraindicated. Exception to the rule is metazolene and indapamide. Then we come to thiazide diuretic, in which I told you that thiazide में hydrochlorothiazide ज़्यादा use होती है, 12.5 milligram. Although chlorthalidone is a longer acting, जिसकी 48 hours तक होती है, और then hydrochlorothiazide जिसकी 24 hours तक की होती है, and may have a better round the clock action. But still hydrochlorothiazide is preferred by the clinician. So if you see how does the thiazide diuretic act, so this is acting on distal convolutive tubule, and it is going to inhibit a symporter, that is sodium and chloride symporter. And as you can see, this is a collecting duct area, this is the lumen, this is the tubular cells. And so if you see, this is blood. So whenever, if you inhibit this sodium chloride co-transporter, what will happen? It is going to inhibit the entry of sodium. Whenever there is a low sodium, it will facilitate the calcium reabsorption by the sodium calcium exchanger. That is why I told you that it is inhibiting the excretion of calcium. And so it is going to do what? It is going to be useful in patients with osteoporosis because sodium excretion is inhibited. But main action of diuresis is by inhibiting the sodium chloride importer, by which it is going to produce this effect. And by this, the 10% of the filtered sodium is normally reabsorbed in the distal convoluted tubule. So जो 10% filtered sodium reabsorb होने वाला था वो नहीं होगा, और उसके साथ साथ वाटर भी एक्सक्रीट होगा. अब जो बेसिक पॉइंट ये है कि यहाँ तो थायजाइड ऐड करता है, और जो रीएब्जॉर्प्शन इनहिबिट हुआ वो सोडियम के थ्रू, सोडियम और वाटर लेकर एक्सक्रीट हो गया. So there will be loss of sodium and water. There can be hypokalemic metabolic alkalosis, and there can be increased calcium reabsorption. This is how it is going to act on distal convoluted tubule. So initial action क्या हुआ? क्योंकि इसने blood volume को कम किया है by 5 to 15%, and this decreases the cardiac output. Second is, it is subsequently compensatory mechanism always operate to regain the sodium balance and plasma volume. So cardiac output is restored, but the fall in blood pressure is maintained by slowly developing reduction in total peripheral resistance. Now this again I would like to explain. पहला काम क्या था? कार्डियक आउटपुट को कम करना है बाय रिड्यूसिंग द ब्लड वॉल्यूम. और ये ब्लड वॉल्यूम क्यों रिड्यूस हुआ? क्योंकि 5 to 10% रीएब्जॉर्प्शन ऑफ सोडियम जो डिस्टल कॉन्वोल्यूटेड ट्यूब्यूल से हुआ वो नहीं हुआ, और उसके साथ साथ वाटर भी एक्सक्रीट हो गया. तो सोडियम और वाटर एक्सक्रीट हो गया तो ब्लड वॉल्यूम कम हो गया. लेकिन ग्रेजुअली कॉम्पनसेटरी मैकेनिज्म आते हैं बॉडी में और लॉस्ट चीज को वापस गेन करने की कोशिश करते हैं, कार्डियक आउटपुट मेंटेन करते हैं, बट स्टिल एंटी हाइपरटेंसिव एक्शन नहीं जाता. उसका रीजन ये है, स्मॉल परसिस्टेंट सोडियम डेफिसिट रहता है वैस्कुलर स्मूथ मसल्स में, जिससे वेसल वॉल की स्टिफनेस कम हो जाती है. स्टिफनेस का मतलब समझते हो? स्टिफनेस मतलब जो एकदम हार्ड और स्टिफ हो जाती है, कॉन्स्ट्रिक्शन हो जाता है जिसका, वो नहीं हो पाती. और स्टिफ किसके अगेंस्ट होती है? टू एंडोजेनस वासोकॉन्स्ट्रिक्टर स्टिमुलाइन. एंड व्हाट आर दे? बॉडी के अंदर नॉर एपिनेफ्रिन भी होती है, जिसको नॉर एड्रेनालिन भी कहते हैं, एंजियोटेंसिन 2 भी होता है. इन सब के लिए जो उसकी सेंसिटिविटी होती है वेसल वॉल की, वो कम हो जाती है, तो वासोकॉन्स्ट्रिक्शन नहीं होगा उनके रिस्पॉन्स में. ठीक है. प्लस इसका एडिशनल एक्शन होता है ओपनिंग ऑफ पोटेशियम चैनल, दैट इज पोटेशियम एटीपी चैनल, जिससे वासोडाइलेटेशन होगा. So they are, thiazides are mild antihypertensive. A fall in mean arterial blood pressure is about 10 mm of the mercury. So this is a proposed action that small persistent sodium deficit जो vessel wall में होता है, उसकी वजह से क्या हो जाता है? वासोकॉन्स्ट्रिक्टर एलिमेंट का जो रिस्पॉन्स आना चाहिए वो नहीं आता. और कौन से वासोकॉन्स्ट्रिक्टर एलिमेंट्स होते हैं? नॉर एड्रेनालिन एंड एंजियोटेंसिन 2. वो जो वासोकॉन्स्ट्रिक्शन प्रोड्यूस करते ब्लड वेसल्स में वो नहीं कर पाएंगे. और क्यों नहीं कर पाएंगे? क्योंकि स्टिफनेस कम हो गई बिकॉज ऑफ slight persisting sodium deficit. This is the most important proposed antihypertensive action. Desirable property, I will take another 2 minutes and then I will end the class. And then I will talk in the second part the rest of the drug. Desirable properties क्या है thiazide की as antihypertensive? Once a day आप इसको दे सकते हो. फ्लैट डोज रिस्पॉन्स कर्व है. जैसे आपने 25 मिलीग्राम तक भी डोज इंक्रीज कर दी तो उसके बाद इसका कोई इफेक्ट इंक्रीज नहीं होगा. जबकि लूप डायरेटिक्स में जैसे जैसे डोज इंक्रीज करेंगे वैसे वैसे उसकी वाटर लूजिंग कैपेसिटी बढ़ती जाएगी. ठीक है. लेकिन हमें चाहिए क्या? यहाँ पे स्लो सस्टेन्ड इफेक्ट. सो वो थायाजाइड है. वंस डेली डोजिंग, फ्लैट डोज रिस्पॉन्स कर्व, परमिटिंग द सिंपल स्टैंडर्डाइज्ड रेजिम, नो फ्लूइड रिटेंशन, नो टॉलरेंस, लो इंसिडेंस ऑफ पोस्टुरल हाइपरटेंशन जो कि और ड्रग से होता है जैसे कि अल्फा ब्लॉकर्स. रिलेटिव फ्रीडम फ्रॉम साइड इफेक्ट स्पेशली सीएनएस कंपेयर टू सिंपैथोलाइटिक. जितनी भी सिंपैथोलाइटिक्स होती है वो सिडेशन प्रोड्यूस करेंगी, लेकिन ये ड्रग सिडेशन प्रोड्यूस नहीं करेगी. तो ये इसका एडवांटेज हो गया. इट कैन बी इफेक्टिवली कंट्रोलिंग द आइसोलेटेड सिस्टोलिक हाइपरटेंशन. देयर इज लेस चांसेस ऑफ लिप फ्रैक्चर, the hip fracture due to hypercalciuric action of the थायजाइड कैल्शियम एक्सक्रीशन को कम करेंगे, एंड ऑफ कोर्स इट इज अ लो डोज और लो कॉस्ट रेजिम. दे डू नॉट हैव एनी इफेक्ट ऑन कैपेसिटेंस वेसल्स. ठीक है, कैपेसिटेंस वेसल्स का मतलब क्या है? वेन्स. ठीक है, सिंपैथिक रिफ्लेक्सेस आर नॉट इम्पेयर्ड, पोस्चरल हाइपरटेंशन इज रेयर, दे कैन बी कंबाइंड. जैसे मैंने आपको बताया था, वासोडायलेटर और सेंट्रल सिम्पैथोलाइटिक से कंबाइन कर सकते हैं. दे आर इफेक्टिव इन एल्डरली, एंड मैक्सिमम हाइपरटेंसिव इफेक्ट इज रीच्ड एट 25 मिलीग्राम पर डे डोज. उसके बाद फिर आप कंबाइन कर दो, उसके बाद इसका एंटी हाइपरटेंसिव इफेक्ट नहीं हो सकता कंबाइन. अब जो अगर ओवर द काउंटर ड्रग, नॉन स्टेरॉइडल एंटी इन्फ्लेमेटरी ड्रग्स उनको साथ में देंगे तो इसका इफेक्ट कम हो जाएगा, क्योंकि प्रोस्टाग्लैंडिन भी एक इंपॉर्टेंट मैकेनिज्म ऑफ एक्शन होता है. आउट ऑफ ऑल दिस थायराइड डायरेक्टेड, इंडोपामाइड जो होती है वो बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट माइल्ड डायरेटिक होती है, which can be given even in the kidney failure. So यहाँ पे इंडोपामाइड की कैरेक्टरिस्टिक फीचर होती है कि बहुत थोड़ा सा डायरेसिस करती है, इलेक्ट्रोलाइट डिस्टर्बेंसेस, पोटेशियम लॉस मिनिमम होता है, एंड इट इज हैविंग एडिशनल वासोडायलेटर एक्शन आल्सो. क्या होती है इसकी एडिशनल वासोडायलेटर एक्शन? exerted through alteration of ionic fluxes through vascular smooth muscles, and is very well tolerated. डोज भी इसकी थोड़ी सी है, 2.5 मिलीग्राम, which is good enough. अब हाई सीलिंग डायरेटिक्स मैंने आपको बताया, दीज आर नॉट ड्रग ऑफ चॉइस, दे आर वीकर एंटी हाइपरटेंसिव एज कंपेयर टू थायराइड, क्योंकि इसका डिपेंडेंसी है सिर्फ प्लाज्मा वॉल्यूम और कार्डियक आउटपुट को कम करने का, और इसका मैकेनिज्म ऑफ एक्शन, नाइट्रियोटिक एक्शन 4 to 6 आवर्स ही लास्ट करता है, प्रोलॉन्ग एक्शन नहीं होता. और इसके अलावा कॉम्पनसेटरी मैकेनिज्म से proximal tubular reabsorption of sodium बढ़ जाता है. If you see here, it is acting on this side. This is a loop diuretic acting on this side. थिक असेंडिंग लिम ऑफ पे ऐड करेंगे, सोडियम पोटेशियम 2 क्लोराइड को ट्रांसपोर्टर को इनिबिट करेंगे, जिससे कि सोडियम अंदर आ रहा था, पोटेशियम आ रहा था, 2 क्लोराइड आ रहे थे. So this will address 25% of the filtered sodium is normally reabsorbed in the loop of handling. So loop diuretic will cause loss of water and sodium more as compared to the thiazide diuretic. हाइपोकैलेमिक मेटाबॉलिक एल्कोलोसिस होगा और इंक्रीज कैल्शियम लॉस होगा. वो तो डिक्रीज इन कैल्शियम लॉस था, ये इंक्रीज इन कैल्शियम लॉस होगा. सो दिस इज हाउ द लूप डायरेटिक्स एक्ट. सो मोर ऑफ दिस इज एक्टिंग. द प्रपोज्ड मैकेनिज्म, these are indicated. now अब क्वेश्चन आता है कब देंगे इसको? जब क्रोनिक रीनल फेलियर होगा, क्योंकि तब थायराइड इनफेक्टिव होगी. जब को एग्जिस्टिंग रिफ्रैक्टरी कंजस्टिव हार्ट फेलियर होगा, जिसमें बहुत सारा इडीमा होगा और अपने को फ्लूइड बाहर निकालना है, तो तब हम देंगे कंजस्टिव हार्ट फेलियर एडिशनली हो जब हाइपरटेंशन के साथ, एंड इन कॉम्बिनेशन रेजिम containing a thiazide or mark fluid retention due to potent vasodilators. तो जब potent vasodilators दे रहे होते हैं तब भी अगर हमें एड्रेस करना है रिफ्लेक्स मैकेनिज्म से जो सॉल्ट एंड वाटर रिटेंशन होता है उसको एड्रेस करना है, तो हम लूप डायरेटिक्स दे देंगे. एडवर्स इफेक्ट्स एज आई टोल्ड यू, हाइपोकैलेमिया कर सकता है, इरेक्टाइल डिसफंक्शन करता है इन मेल्स, कार्बोहाइड्रेट इंटॉलरेंस करता है. प्लीज जानो कि इंसुलिन, प्रो इंसुलिन से इंसुलिन बनने के लिए पोटेशियम चाहिए होता है, लेकिन अगर हाइपोकैलेमिया हो गया तो प्रो इंसुलिन से इंसुलिन नहीं बन पाएगा, इसलिए कार्बोहाइड्रेट इंटॉलरेंस होता है. डिसलिपिडीमिया होता है. राइज, प्लीज नोट, लिपिड होस्टाइल है ये ड्रग्स. लिपिड लेवल्स जब इंक्रीज हो जाते हैं लिपिड के साथ, क्योंकि कोमॉर्बिड कंडीशन होती है, हाइपरलिपिडीमिया होता है, तो ये लिपिड अनफ्रेंडली ड्रग है. दे विल कॉज राइज इन टोटल एंड एलडीएल कोलेस्ट्रॉल एंड ट्राइग्लिसराइड एंड लोअरिंग ऑफ गुड कोलेस्ट्रॉल, दैट इज एचडीएल. हाइपरयूरिसीमिया करेगा तो गाउट में कॉन्ट्रा इंडिकेटेड है जो डायरेटिक्स है. So this is the end of the lectures. I will cover the rest of the part in which I am going to cover the beta blockers, the vasodilators, and I will also cover the individual urgencies and emergencies, what should be given. Also the combination I will going to talk about, and the pregnancy induced hypertension. So I stop here. In my next class I am going to achieve my next objectives. But again I am telling you that I am really feeling very very bad that people, I can see the people I have noted down who has left, and I will get back to you whenever feasible that this is not the right way of having your classes attended. If you are doing an effort, you should recognize that you are not. So thank you. Hi, good morning.